Banks have a secret name for people who pay off their credit cards every month. They call them deadbeats, and they mean it as an insult. That responsible financial behavior you're so proud of, banks have built an entire system to make sure it never actually sets you free. They don't want you broke. They don't want you debt-free. They want you stuck in the middle forever. Today, I'm exposing exactly how banks engineer responsible people into permanent, profitable debt, the math they're hoping you never see, and how to actually escape a system designed to keep you paying until you literally die. This is going to make you angry. Let's get into it. Okay, so here's something that's going to ruin your day. Credit card companies divide their customers into two categories: revolvers and transactors. Revolvers are people who carry a balance month to month. Transactors pay their balance in full. And what do banks call transactors? What do they call the responsible people who never miss a payment and never pay interest? Deadbeats. I'm not making this up. That's actual industry terminology. You paid your bill on time and in full like a responsible adult, and somewhere in a bank's headquarters, a spreadsheet labeled you a deadbeat because you're not profitable enough. Here's why. Federal Reserve data shows that heavy revolvers, people who carry balances every month, represent just 20% of credit card accounts. But they pay 72% of all credit card interest. Meanwhile, transactors, the responsible ones, contribute 0.7% of interest revenue, despite being 21% of accounts. McKinsey ran the numbers and found that a revolver generates about $240 in profit per account. A transactor, $25. You're worth almost 10 times less to the bank if you're financially responsible. So when your credit card company sends you a thank you note for being a valued customer, what they really mean is, thank you for carrying that balance. Please never pay it off. You're doing amazing, sweetie. Now let me show you how minimum payments actually work, because this is where it gets diabolical. You might think minimum payments exist to help you manage your debt responsibly. That's adorable. Minimum payments are mathematically designed to keep you in debt as long as humanly possible while extracting maximum interest. Let's do the math. The average American credit card balance is about $6,270. At the average interest rate of 22%, if you only pay the minimum every month, how long do you think it takes to pay that off? 1 year? 2 years? 5 years? Try 38 years and 10 months. 38 years for $6,000. And the total interest you'd pay? $33,806. You'd pay more than 5 times the original amount in interest alone. That's not an accident. That's a feature. The minimum payment is carefully calculated to be just high enough that you won't default, but just low enough that you'll basically never escape. Federal Reserve research found that 29% of credit card accounts regularly pay at or near the minimum. And here's the psychological trick. The minimum payment creates what researchers call an anchoring effect. When you see that little number on your statement, your brain treats it as the normal amount to pay. Even people who could afford to pay more anchor to that number and pay close to it. The Credit Card Act of 2009 now requires statements to show how long minimum payments will take and total interest owed. Great, right? Except that disclosure is in tiny print right next to a big, bold minimum payment number that your brain sees first and anchors to anyway. It's like putting a calorie count on a Big Mac in font size 4 while the picture of the burger takes up the whole menu. Technically, you have the information. Practically, it doesn't matter. Now let's talk about the 30-year mortgage, because this one is going to hurt. Before the 1930s, mortgages were 5 to 7-year loans with 50% down payments. If you couldn't pay it off, You rolled it into a new loan or lost the house. Then the FHA came along in 1934 and said, hey, what if we made mortgages longer so more people could afford homes? And banks said, that's a great idea. We'll also collect way more interest that way. Congress authorized the 30-year mortgage in 1948, and today, 90% of American mortgages are 30-year fixed. Because that's just how it's done, right? That's normal. Here's what normal costs you. On a $320,000 mortgage, which is pretty modest these days, at 6.5% interest, the 30-year option costs you $408,000 in interest. A 15-year mortgage at 5.8% costs you $158,000 in interest. The difference is $249,000, $250,000 extra, for the privilege of smaller monthly payments. But wait, it gets worse. During the first decade of a 30-year mortgage, 70 to 86% of every payment goes to interest, not principal. You don't reach the point where more of your payment goes to principal than interest until year 18 and a half. So for almost 2 decades, you're basically renting your house from the bank while technically owning it. You're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars and barely touching the actual loan amount. And here's the real kicker. The average American stays in their home for just 8 years. Then they sell and buy a new house and start over. Brand new 30-year mortgage, brand new 18 years of mostly interest payments. The cycle resets and banks collect another few $100,000. That's not homeownership. That's a subscription service for shelter. Okay, now let's talk about everyone's favorite scam, 0% APR offers. You've seen these, right? 0% interest for 18 months? Balance transfer with no APR until next year? Sounds like free money. The bank is basically giving you an interest-free loan out of the goodness of their heart. Yeah, no. Banks aren't charities. These offers are calculated bets against your ability to pay on time. CFPB data shows that about 20% of consumers fail to pay off these balances before the promotional period ends. For subprime borrowers, that number jumps to over 40%. And here's the trap. Many of these offers use something called deferred interest. That means interest is secretly accruing the entire promotional period. If you pay it all off in time, great, it disappears. But if even $1 remains when the clock runs out, you owe all the accrued interest from day one. Let me show you how brutal this is. Say you put $2,500 on a 24-month deferred interest card at 24% APR. You pay off $2,400 over 2 years, feeling great about yourself. But you leave $100 remaining. Congratulations. You now owe nearly $400 in retroactive interest on the entire original amount. That $100 whoopsie just became a $500 mistake. Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia research found that banks actually lose money during promotional periods. The 3% balance transfer fee doesn't cover their costs. But they do it anyway, because they know a significant percentage of people will fail. And when they fail catastrophically. It's like a casino offering free chips. Sure, some people will walk out winners, but the house knows the math is in their favor over thousands of players. Now here's where it all comes together. Americans will pay between $279,000 and $649,000 in lifetime interest. That's just interest, not principal, not the actual stuff you bought, just the fee for borrowing money to buy it. Across all debt, mortgages, credit cards, auto loans, the average American pays about $1.8 million in lifetime debt. The breakdown is wild. Mortgage payments account for about $1.1 million. Credit cards, $388,000. Auto loans, $245,000. Student loans, $35,000. And here's the stat that should genuinely disturb you. 73% of Americans die with outstanding debt. The average debt at death is $61,554. Let me say that again. Almost 3/4 of Americans die still owing money. The system is so effective at keeping people in permanent debt that most people literally never escape. They die in the red. And this isn't an accident. This isn't financial illiteracy. This is the business model working exactly as designed. Federal Reserve data confirms that approximately 80% of credit card profitability comes from consumers who carry balances. Late fees add another 16%. The transaction function, meaning interchange fees when you swipe your card, actually contributes -4% to profitability because rewards programs cost more than interchange brings in. In other words, if everyone paid their credit cards off every month, the credit card industry would collapse. They need revolvers. They need people stuck in permanent, manageable debt. That's the product. So how do banks keep people in this permanent debt state? They actively engineer it. Credit limit increases. Banks use algorithms to identify which customers will borrow more if their limits are raised. Then they proactively increase limits without you even asking. The average credit limit in America just hit $32,000. Not because everyone is super credit worthy, because banks want you to have room to borrow more. Research found that when these algorithms target people already in debt, the result is higher borrowing and greater financial vulnerability. The bank isn't rewarding your good behavior. It's giving you more rope. Cash out refinancing. Americans have $35.8 trillion in home equity. During 2020 and 2021, 5 million borrowers extracted $430 billion by refinancing their homes. In 2022, 77% of all refinances were cash out. The most common reason people gave for doing this, to pay off other bills and debts. More than 50% said that. So they're converting short-term, unsecured debt into 30-year secured debt. They feel relief because their monthly payments dropped, but they just added decades to their debt timeline and put their home at risk. Banks love this. It's like a debt consolidation that actually makes them more money. Retail store cards. The CFPB found that 90% of retail credit cards charge APRs over 30%. The average retail card APR is 30.45%. These cards target you at checkout with Save 20% Today offers. So you save $40 on your jeans purchase, feel smart about it, then carry a balance at 30% interest. That $40 savings turns into hundreds of dollars in interest if you don't pay it off immediately, which statistically, most people don't. Here's what really gets me. Debt has become so normalized that researchers call it, quote, the American way. A study in the Journal of Consumer Research found that consumers take on debt because it feels normal. One participant literally said, it's the American way. The study found that people who tried to avoid credit found it impossible to be a, quote, normal consumer without it. Think about how wild that is. Debt isn't a tool. It's not even a necessary evil. It's become part of American identity. Having a car payment is normal. Having a mortgage is responsible. Having credit card debt is just how things work. The average car payment is $748 a month for new vehicles. The average loan term is 66 to 68 months. 7-year car loans are increasingly common. Most Americans never experience life without a car payment. It's just a permanent line item in their budget forever. And here's the psychological trick that keeps it all running: duration neglect. Research published in Frontiers in Psychology found that people barely consider how long a loan is when deciding to take it. They focus almost entirely on monthly payments. As long as the monthly number feels manageable, they'll accept basically any timeline. That's why 30-year mortgages work. That's why 7-year car loans exist. That's why minimum payments are set where they are. Banks know you'll focus on what you pay this month, not what you pay over decades. So what do you actually do with this information? First, never pay just the minimum, ever. Even $20 extra per month can cut years off your credit card debt. The minimum payment is a trap designed to maximize interest. Treat it as the floor, not the target. Second, do the total cost math. Before taking any loan, calculate the full amount you'll pay over the entire term. A 7-year car loan at 6% on $30,000 costs you $6,700 in interest. A 4-year loan costs you $3,800. That's almost $3,000 for the privilege of slightly lower monthly payments. Third, be extremely skeptical of promotional offers. 0% APR sounds great until you realize 20 to 40% of people fail and get hit with retroactive interest. If you use these offers, set a calendar reminder and pay it off early. Fourth, question the 30-year mortgage default. Run the numbers on a 15-year mortgage. Yes, the payments are higher, but you'll save potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars and actually build equity instead of just paying interest for 2 decades. Fifth, recognize that banks are not on your side. They're not evil. They're just businesses optimizing for profit, and their profit comes from you staying in debt forever. Every product they offer, every helpful increase in your credit limit, every promotional rate is designed to keep you borrowing. The system wants you to be a good, responsible person who pays on time, never defaults, and never actually escapes. Not broke, not free, just permanently in the middle, making payments until you die. 73% of Americans do exactly that. Now you know why. If this video made you see your bank differently, hit that subscribe button. I break down how money actually works every week, and I promise you'll never look at a 0% APR offer the same way again. Drop a comment and tell me which part made you the angriest. Was it the deadbeat thing? The 30-year mortgage math? The dying in debt stat? I want to know what hit hardest. All right, go check your minimum payment. I'll see you in the next one.